In his wake, two worlds collide, and one is transformed forever.
I am Patrick, a sinner, the least of all the faithful and utterly despised by many. Although I am imperfect in many things, I nevertheless wish that my brethren and kinsmen should know what sort of person I am.
His story begins not in Ireland, but in Britain, at the westernmost edge of the Roman Empire. Patrick was born in the town of Banavem at the close of the 4th century.
He was by culture a Roman, and that meant that he was a product of a highly organized civilization, the most organized civilization in ancient times.
Patrick was the son of a Roman nobleman, so he grew up in a household of wealth. He would have been waited on, and he would have seen that as a very normal form of life.
It was a way of life that would not endure. Christianity had become the empire's official religion, but Patrick was one of many who strayed.
We turned away from God and did not keep his commandments, and did not obey our priests.
He didn't practice, he said. We didn't listen to our clergy, who warned us about our salvation.
The walls of Banavem could not protect Patrick from the forces that lurked beyond. His life of ease and comfort would come to an end in a brutal twist of fate.
It was violent and merciless and quick. They just dashed in, killed many of the servants, and took the ones they thought would be valuable. They didn't kill those, and they dumped them into the boats.
At the age of 16, Patrick was kidnapped by the most fearsome barbarians of their day, Irish slave traders.
The Irish raiders were professionals. They were out to make money, to kidnap slaves and to sell them back in Ireland.
For Patrick and the others taken that day, the voyage west was like falling off the edge of the earth. Protected by a treacherous sea, Ireland had never been conquered by mighty Rome. Its sheer cliffs kept at bay all but the most fearless pirates and slave traders.
They knew the route along the southern coast and up into the west coast of Ireland. And then what they did was they sold the slaves all along the coastline to people who were interested in buying them.
Patrick knew his fate. Nobody escaped from Ireland. Nobody ever made it back to Britain.
He thought he'd never again see home. Everything was gone. Now he was a slave.
The Irish were a fighting people. They were always fighting. There was no united Ireland. There was a high king who paid the attention to him beyond 10 miles beyond his palace. They never did, they still don't.
We know from Irish stories that they engaged in headhunting, that they prized bravery and fierceness in battle.
heads you could cut off as a warrior, the better. The soul was believed to be contained within the head. So to take the head of your enemy was literally to almost take their soul.
The Lord brought over us the wrath of his anger, and scattered us among the many nations, even unto the utmost part of the earth, where now my littleness is placed among strangers.
Patrick's savage captors sold him to the chieftain of a remote Irish realm.
One can only guess at the shocking transformation it must have been from a well-organized, reasonably quiet life to something that bore no resemblance at all to anything that he had been used to. This is what is the measure of the man. Many a human being would have collapsed, psychologically collapsed, just to cast off in the lowest strata of society. Patrick didn't. Patrick survived.
But his life as a slave and outcast had just begun. Darker days lay ahead. Patrick's master sent his miserable young slave to the mountains to tend his flock. The stony pasture became Patrick's prison, the sheep his only companions.
He was terribly lonely and despairing and totally helpless, stripped down.
As the months turned into years, Patrick lost all hope of ever going home again. He faced his hunger and his terror alone.
The amazing thing is how he survived it all. But it's perfectly clear that he was thrown back on the only stable and powerful influence in his life, which was his Christian religion. He turned to his Christian God.
I would pray constantly through snow, frost, rain.
He says he would pray up to 100 times a day, and as often again during the night.
Something happens to you when you're alone like that. You develop such a relationship with nature, and nature's clouds and movement and the mystical Irish landscape. It has a huge effect on you.
The love of God and his fear came to me more and more, and my faith was strengthened.
It was what we now call a conversion. And religious conversions can be very powerful things. We don't have to quote Paul on the road to Damascus.
In no case, Moses, Paul, Patrick, did this conversion come about as an act of choice. It is forcefully done to the converted man.
Before I was humbled, I was like a stone, lying in deep mud. But he that is mighty came, and in his mercy raised me aloft.
It was in the midst of prayer that Patrick's transformation began.
I heard a voice saying to me, "It is well that you fast. Soon you will go to your own country.
Soon you will go to your own country. How could he go to his own country as a slave? How could he get out of Ireland? Where would he go?
And again, after a short while, I heard a voice saying to me, "Behold, your ship awaits you." It was not near, at a distance of perhaps 200 miles. I had never been there, nor did I know a living soul there.
Patrick knew that the Irish put runaway slaves to death. Nevertheless, he began his escape.
I took flight and left those with whom I had stayed for 6 years.
A slave who escapes is actually breaking the law, and anybody who provides him with any kind of protection in the process is also in breach of the law.
It was an awesome journey. He was coming from the northwestern part of Ireland, and he had to journey across the entire island. He had to avoid any sorts of settlements. He may have traveled at night, anything to avoid attention.
I went in the strength of God, who directed my way to my good, and I feared nothing.
He had learned to trust in God in a way that's unimaginable to most people.
His trust was well placed, for at last Patrick found the ship the voice had promised.
Patrick says that he wasn't afraid until the very end of it, when he came to a ship, because this was the real moment of truth. He had to reveal himself as a runaway Irish slave.
Patrick approached the ship's crew as they prepared to set sail. He begged them to take him aboard.
The ship captain wasn't going to have him. But he doesn't give up because he's had this dream. It says you're going to get home.
I left them, and as I went, I began to pray. And before I had ended my prayer, I heard one of them shouting behind me, "Come, hurry, we shall take you on in good faith." I believe that his spirit even then was crying out in my behalf. And so it came to pass, and we set sail at once.
The voice had led Patrick out of slavery, and now it was bringing him home.
And it's the fulfillment of that promise in a dream that sets him on the way. Something big is happening to this person.
At the dawn of the 5th century, after 6 years of bondage, Patrick found his way home to Banavem.
Nobody had ever escaped from Ireland. It was like somebody returning from the land of the dead.
The whole town celebrated Patrick's return.
You think you're never going to see him again. That's it. So, can you imagine the huge joy when he returns home?
At last, I was in Britain, with my